Well, hello there, and welcome to how I make marmalade. Like I say, I'm definitely no expert at this. However, just before I start, I would like to say I do apologise for my appearance. I'm rather scruffy at the moment. I don't normally get all this going on and things, but apparently the number one son has a surprise, slightly late Father's Day present for me. And it's a surprise, and I don't know what it is, but I was told I had to make sure I had a good few days of growth and I hadn't been allowed to cut my hair when I would normally do it. So it probably gives it away what he's got planned for me. It'd probably be something that I wouldn't normally do. But anyway, there we go, and onward. Well, good morning. I just thought I'd have a quick show at how I make marmalade. I know for a long time myself I thought, oh heck, it takes ages and all onerous and whatever, but actually it's quite a quick process, and it's not a massively difficult thing to do. And there's a few little things you need to be aware of, like making sure your jars are clean and things like that. I'm lucky in the fact that I have access to the most beloved blender, which makes things an awful lot easier. But this particular one I'll be doing in the microwave, so and it just makes it a lot quicker. So if you are a bit of a busy person, it really cuts it down. You're not on the ring boiling for a couple of hours. So yeah, I'll show you what I do to start with. I've got a pile of strawberries I've collected out of a neighbour's garden. Thank you very much. Now I've got, for an average sort of like sized jar like this that you can buy, these were pretty cheap. I think these were $1 at the warehouse, so a fraction of the price of a lot of places. Now what I have is, I've worked out that approximately 1,200 grams of fruit will fill me 3 jars, and I then put 900 grams of sugar in. I don't put 50-50, I'd rather have a bit more fruit and a bit less sugar, but you have to remember you need a lot of sugar in there because that's the preservative. So anyway, I'll crack on and I'll show you what I do. Anyway. Right. So, this orange, I've already cut this one in half. I've done a few segments, then I thought I would do this particular thing. But basically all I do is I'll take it into segments, because this makes it easy, really, to get the pips out. A little cut to get rid of that, the white sort of pith in the middle. And then it's just a case of flicking out the pips. This is probably the longest, well, apart from obviously leaving it cooking, this is probably the longest job of the lot. Straight into the food processor, one. And obviously all the bits and pieces you save off of here, it all goes into the compost. And really it's as simple as that, and then you just keep on going. And what I do is I'm going to do mine in a couple of batches. You have to remember that the more you put in there, if you try and do a huge batch to start with, you can, there's nothing to stop you doing that, but then your cooking time takes an awful lot longer as well. So I tend to do mine in a couple of smaller batches. And maybe I'm a bit paranoid because I don't do much, I've got to admit. I'm certainly no blooming expert at this. I just feel then sometimes if something were to go wrong, I'm only going to ruin maybe a third of whatever it is I'm wanting to do, or part of it. 3, 4, and on we go. There we go. And I will, once I've got all these done, I'll bring you back for the next bit. So what I've done up to press is I've just actually chopped up half of the oranges I want for this particular batch. The reason for that is I just find if you put them all in the processor, by the time you've actually made sure there's no thick lumps in there, some of it's almost really mush and pureed. But obviously with marmalade it's nice to have a few lumps and things in it, and gives it that zest and that flavour and things like that. So what I'll do, I'm just going to do it in half. There we go. Boom. Power on, and she's working. Oh, couldn't get the thing to work last time. And here we go. Have a little look. Oh. Oh, smells awesome. Wow. One more few big lumps in. There we go. Right, now that's, as you can see even from the outside, that's still quite fibrous and quite lumpy. So obviously you don't have to bother cleaning anything. I'm just going to take that first batch out, bob that in the jug, and then crack on with the second half, and I'll bring you back at that point. Welcome back. So basically what I've done here, hopefully I'm not panning too quickly, I'm just measuring the sugar into the bowl. So I got around 1,200 grams of fruit, so I've put 900 grams of sugar in, obviously then allowing for the weight of the bowl. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a bit of a mix up, and then quite a percentage of that I will go from my mixing bowl here, and I'll see what I can get into my large bowl. When you're doing this, whether it's in the microwave or it's in a pan, excusing my teeth, must have put the wrong teeth in this morning, don't overfill it because it gets bloody hot. I think you have to get the jam to something like 220 degrees before it will actually start to set, so that's rather hot. And another tip is when I put the jug into the microwave, I actually put it on a plate so that I can not only lift it out with the handle, which is why I like a glass jug with a handle, it makes it easier to handle, I'm not touching the sides. I'll also have the plate underneath it to hold it with, so it's very balanced. You don't want to spill this stuff, even if it's in a pan on the, you know, on the cooker, you don't want to spill it. So I'm going to get that done, and then I will bring you back, and I've got the jars to get ready, and then into the microwave. So here we go, we're in the microwave now. What I'm going to do is I'll pop that into there and set that 2, 3, 4, 5. Initially I'm going to give that 15 minutes, and then what I'll do after that 15 minutes, I'll give it a mix and then reset it, and then I keep doing it in 5-minute intervals, and every 5 minutes I give it a little mix up, and it lets me keep an eye on it. And then it gets to a point where you'll see it, all of a sudden it seems to almost look like molten lava rather than just a bubbling liquid, and that's when you know you've got to the temperature where you need to set it. Now I'll give it another 5 minutes, and then she'll be ready for the jars. So what I'm going to do with the jars now is I take each of my jars, I'm going to empty the sink out here, I'm going to empty my jars, and then what I like to do is to sterilise them with what they recommend is just boiling water. But I don't know, I'm just a bit wary sometimes, so what I do is I'll get some water as hot as I can get out of just out of my system, and I'll put all the jars I'm going to use into that initially, which gives them a bit of a rinse. And you know, I've already washed them all very carefully and dried them, but I'll give them that, and that brings them up sort of like to well, I don't know what temperature, but it's above hand hot. It's, you know, the jars are already hot, so it's not as much of a shock then when you put the boiling water in to clean them. So that's what I'm going to do now. Right, well here we are, we're just about sorted. Now I've just put the microwave on for an extra couple of minutes. I'll show you that in a second. Obviously the time while I've been cooking this hasn't been wasted. Like I said, I've just had to keep giving it a quick stir. But in between that I've actually got my next batch already here. So this has all been mushed up and sugared up and everything else. I was hoping to get a coffee, and I might just have to squeeze that in, but it's all hands to the pump now. And I'll just show you what happens and how you can tell when it's ready. You see how full the actual jug is? You can see all the movement, hopefully, in all the little bits in the jam, and how it's slowly sinking down. So, you know, once you've got it to that point and it's bubbling away like this, that's pretty much ready. So once you see that, I give that an extra 2 or 3 minutes, just to make sure everything's really well through. And as I said earlier, I've now filled up these with hot water, so that'll bring the temperature of the jars up a little bit. I've just boiled the jug, so in another, well, anytime as soon as I've put this camera down, I'm going to tip these out and get some boiling water in there. So here we go. That's quite hot actually already. That, because obviously that water would actually just cool down the boiling water, so we don't want that. We want the boiling water in here now to get these all nice and clean. And I'm not too obsessed with the lids. I make sure they're really clean and they'll get the water on them, but they're going to be they will very shortly end up a little bit in each. Don't just fill it up. I fill them up gradually, and again you're just reducing that bit of shock in the glass, which when they're new shouldn't be a problem, but if you've used them previously, then or if they have been used previously, glass does get old. It doesn't last forever. It can get old, and as it gets old it starts to get a bit brittle. Right, there we go. Give that a second or two. Microwave's letting me know that's done. Let's have a look. The smell is awesome. Absolutely. Oh, hi. Oh, that's hot. Awesome. Right, here we go. So I'm going to tip these out, grab them out of here, and then we'll get some jam into them. Move it back a little bit. Where's my... There we are. Put them on a cooling rack so they can actually cool. A good rinse. Ooh, ha, ha, ha. Make sure they've had a really good contact with the boiling water. You're probably better off with gloves on. I wish I had asbestos fingers, but I don't. But I don't touch them for long, and I don't go. Obviously, at this point from now on, I'm not going to go anywhere near the necks or anywhere else where I might inadvertently introduce a bit of food matter or anything else. So. There we go. So they're all ready now. As I said, that's why I like to have a jug on the handle. Oh, that looks almost, it looks like crystalline. It's almost like some sort of crystal type of setup. There we go. Keep it mixing, or it does sort of like the top starts to just cool. As soon as it starts to cool, it starts to set. So you've got to keep making sure you've got a good mix going on. Something to protect the hands, because it's very hot. Everything is very hot. And here we go. This is a bit more than I normally do, so I don't know how many of these jars I will be able to fill. And when you do, you need to leave a good couple of centimetres at the top of the jar, and that allows you to get a nice air seal in there. Oh, I'm going to get 3 out of it. That's right. That's okay. I'll get 3 out of that. That's good. I was prepared if it was in case there was a little bit more, rather than wasting it. I could have put it into that jar, closed the jar up, kept it sealed, and then topped it up with the next batch. You see, but that's a pretty damn good guess there. There we are. Right. Bump. Pop that over the plate. Keep it out of the way. Now the lids, what I do is I just put the lid on all the way down, and then just back a little bit. That's the second one. So take your time, make sure you get the lid on straight, you don't want it skewed, and off a little, off just a little bit. And the reason for that is you want it almost all the way down, but just comes back just a little bit. And what happens then is the heat inside expands the air at the top of the jar. So then when that air expands, it pushes virtually most of the air out of there. So you need to leave it just for a little while. And just make sure the jars are just off bottom. Leave it for a little while. Then after about a minute or so, nip those jars up, and then you'll find that once it cools, that lid, it pulls the lid down, it goes hard, and you know you've got a good seal. And there we are. That's pretty much our first batch. So, and the next lot's ready to go in. That'll give me a good half a dozen jars, plus a couple of jars I've got left from my experimental batch the other day. And I'll show you one of those. I'll put them, there we go, a couple at the back of the cupboard, and as you can see, it all sets, and then once it sets, if you go from there, you can see how it's set nicely. And I'm told it's awesome! Awesomely lovely awesomeliness. Not I've tried it yet, but yeah, there we go. So I've got all the work done, ready for just cooking the next batch, and I can have a nice cup of coffee. So and here we are with the fruits of my labour. So I'm laying it to butter one-handed, marmalade one-handed. There we go. And here's one I did earlier. Marmalade on fresh homemade bread. Proper butter and homemade marmalade. Living the dream. Hope you found that really reasonably interesting, and don't forget to label them, what it is and when you did it. Important thing. And yeah, so I'm going to do some jamming a bit, but I'll bring you back for that later. So hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Next batch.